Jim Mobile heeft zijn eerste showcase te pakken en het is meteen een geweldige klepper, want het is met Mika en die zit hier naast me. Mika, welcome.
Thank you very much.
You've got a new haircut and it's all homemade.
Yes, and it's given me a lot of problems. I had enough because my hair was getting so long, it was down to there at the back, but it was short at the back. You don't really want to know this. But I took a knife out of my kitchen and I just went...
Not even scissors, just throw the knife out.
Every time I do it, it's kind of like, it looks good 1 minute and then really, really bad the next, and it's my stupid fault for doing it.
Now, you don't only have a new haircut, you also have a new album, The Boy Who Knew Too Much. What did you know before that you know right now, after 2 years of being Mika?
It's kind of the other way around. Everything that I thought I knew, I don't know at all anymore. I wanted to go back to one of the reason why I started writing songs in the first place. That's what, in order to kind of, after the crazy year that I had for the first 2 years and the first album, I wanted to kind of lose myself and find myself again as a 16, 17-year-old and doing things for all the same reasons. And so I kind of closed myself off in the studio and I wrote songs from the perspective of a teenager, and in doing so I started to deal with my adolescence. And if you look at the first album, it has a lot of kind of childhood references, and so you could kind of look at this album as a part two. It still sounds like me.
Making an album out of the perspective of a teenager when you're not a teenager anymore, how difficult is it to get into that teenage vibe again?
Well, not that difficult, because in a weird sort of way, I mean, by the age of, I'm 26 now, and things kind of started getting really crazy around 22, so it's not that far away, you know. So I just kind of took a few steps back, and I always felt in my life, generally, I've always been running away from my adolescence because it wasn't necessarily the easiest part of my life, and I wanted to get away from it as fast and as soon as possible. So it just was a good way for me to deal with things. We are golden, we are golden. We are golden, we are golden. Oh, teenage dreams and teenage circus, running around like a clown on purpose.
When we listen to your album, do we get a piece of the real Mika, or is it a fictional character that we hear?
Well, that's what I wanted to address with the second album. I wanted to write songs a little bit more from the first person, but I didn't want to indulge in kind of like examining myself too much. So there is a little bit of the way that I work. Inevitably, I always end up painting comic book versions of real serious situations. So I'll take real situations and I'll cartoonify them in order to make them more bearable, but also to make them more immediate. The funny thing about illustration or comic book drawing is that it is a very distilled form of art. It's very immediate and all the depth is implied, but it has to be very immediate, and pop songs are just like that. So yes, there is a little bit of, you know, this new album being a bit of a comic book version of my adolescence, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's just one of my trademarks. It also means that you can combine very serious or dark things with very joyful music, and that also is becoming one of my kind of trademarks. So I embrace it. Other people try and say, oh, well, you're hiding behind a cartoon character. Well, maybe you could look at it that way, but you could also say I'm actually making parts of life a little bit
well-known fan of Belgian beers. You still got a couple of hours left before you go on stage. Is that a dangerous thing?
Oh yeah, no, it's really bad. It's not good. If I drink before a show, my voice goes.
So I'll know this later on this evening if you have been drinking or not. Well, looking forward to the gig tonight, and have a great time.